Hi guys, it's Teresa. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you better versions of shit books that you could or should rather read. Now, I know that this is a very inflammatory title, and some of these don't fully qualify as like abjectly shit books, but I have found better versions of them. And I've been planning to do this video for so long. I've been collecting this list and trying to figure out which books actually correspond, a little bit at least, to collect a list like this. So I'm so excited to finally be having enough to do this video, and I hope you'll enjoy it. I'm just gonna go by a random order that doesn't mean anything. The first shit book I have is I Know You Know by Gilly Macmillan. The main character of this book is a man named Charlie who, when he was a child, two of his best friends were killed in the woods and this crime was never solved. So as an adult, he starts a podcast and tries to dig into the past and figure out what actually happened back then and to bring the culprit to justice. And I didn't think that this book was very well written, especially for a thriller. Like, the writing itself wasn't too bad, but just like the storytelling aspect of it and the reveal, it was just not my thing at all. I did not enjoy this. I personally felt like the book had a lot of potential, but completely did not live up to it. It was very unsatisfying. It was completely lacking any and all suspense, and I just, you know, the big plot twist at the end is the worst thing in the world. Like, if you've read this book, I'm sure you can relate, because it's so unsatisfying and it doesn't give you anything, pretty much. Like, it's just the worst. So I ended up giving this book 2 stars, and I really did not enjoy it, to say the least. Instead, I would recommend reading Sadie by Courtney Summers. This is also a book that's written in podcast radio show format, where the host of the show is tracking down a girl called Sadie who has run away from home after her sister has died, and she's trying to find out the answers of what happened to her. So we follow Sadie and we follow this radio show host as he follows in her tracks and tries to figure out what happened. And while this book isn't necessarily a thriller, I actually wouldn't call it that at all. It definitely deals with a lot of very dark and heavy topics, and it's very moody and very well written and kind of approaches all of these topics from a very respectful and well thought out way that I really appreciated. And even though there's not any really big plot twists or anything like that, there's still a level of suspense and you still keep reading to want to know more. So I think in pretty much all aspects this book is done a lot better. And if you're looking for a book that's told in podcast format that focuses on like a crime mystery aspect, at least to some extent, highly recommend Sadie, and I would say just pass by I Know You Know, because it's not really worth it. The next book I'm gonna get a lot of flack for calling it shit because it's very beloved, but honestly it's not shit, it's just not good in my opinion. That is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Jenkins Reid. I've said before, I think this book is completely overhyped. It follows the story of like this previously very famous actress that invites a reporter over to basically tell her life story too. And in the telling of that story, some questions are answered also for the reporter herself and stuff like that. I've said before that this book to me felt like it was trying to be so much deeper than it actually was, and some of the messages it sent I personally didn't enjoy, and just overall it seemed almost a little bit pretentious, like, oh, look at me. And then when I found out that the premise of this book was literally copied from another book that was published like 10 years prior, I just kind of got mad, because that's very lazy. That's super lazy. And that book actually is a lot better. And that is The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. This follows a young woman called Margaret Leigh who lives and works at her father's bookshop. And one day she receives a letter from famous author Vida Winter, who wants to tell her life story to her and wants her to write her biography, pretty much. And in the telling of that story, oh my god, the chickens are so loud, I hope you can't hear them outside right now. But in the telling of that story, Margaret Leigh ends up sort of connecting some of those threads that were left unanswered in the past to the present and kind of solves these mysteries in a sense. And she also feels a very strong connection to to Vida Vinta, the author herself. There's a mystery element that is quite surprising, and just overall it's a lot better written. The premise is the same, but the book itself just has a lot more substance. It's better written. It's just a better story flat out, and I just genuinely am still baffled at how this literally just stole the premise and then essentially told a worse version of it. Like, that just is just crazy to me. So honestly, I think even if you enjoyed The Seven Husbands, I highly recommend reading the 13th tale because it's a better version, so you can't go wrong with that. Better is always better, I guess. The next shit book I have is one I actually enjoyed at the time, but looking back at it and considering who the author is, it's objectively not that great. That is Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. It's the first book in, just generally the Infernal Devices series as a whole. There's a better version out there, believe me you. I've talked about it at length before, but that is The Dark Days Club by Alison Goodman. The books have a lot of similarities, but Alison Goodman, in my opinion, is just a flat out better writer. The stories have just, again, more substance. There's a lot more going on, and it's so much more interesting, especially if you're somebody who enjoys historical aspects in historical fiction. I mean, that's why we kind of read them, right? Both of these books are set in the 1800s, I believe, and I'm just gonna assume that you know what the Shadowhunter series is about, but in the Dark Days Club, we follow young Lady Helen who has, or feels like she has a lot to prove because her mother is considered a traitor to the British Crown and has many years ago died. She doesn't know under what circumstances exactly, but she feels like she needs to reject her heritage even though she doesn't want to, but she feels pressure to do so. And then one day she discovers that she actually has powers, just like her mother did, to hunt and kill demons. There actually is a pact between demons and humans where demons can only do like a limited amount of harm, I guess, and if they cross that line then they will be killed. But there seems to be an influx of demons and they seem to be after certain objects that can enhance their powers, and so Lady Helen has to join up with a lord that is a very disreputable figure in society to basically face and conquer this threat. As I said, this book is, in my opinion, a lot better written. The historical setting is much more tangible and well constructed. The romance is much more slow burn and feels just a lot more organic and real, even though the payoff at the end of the third book isn't super there. It's only very, very subdued. But still, I really enjoyed the series overall, and there's just so much more complex and just it's flat out better in my opinion. So if you liked the idea of this one but didn't like the book, go for the Dark Days Club. I honestly, you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. My second to last shit book that we're gonna be replacing with a better one is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Now, I know that this is a YA book, so the parameters are already a bit different, but in my opinion, much better than Six of Crows is The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. This is adult fantasy, and it follows a very similar setup. In both books, we have a group of like vagrant, young, orphaned, or otherwise abandoned children who band together and become this group of thieves that has to face certain threats in their environment. Both of the books are very character focused, I would say. In Six of Crows, it felt a lot more forced. As you can tell, we have a lot less screen time on all of the characters, and I've said millions of times before how I'm not the biggest fan of huge casts of characters in books because they all fall sort of inadvertently into stereotypes and into very set one-dimensional roles that are supposed to be only very loosely structured and characterized, so almost any sort of reader can identify with at least one person in the book. So that's sort of the downfall of a book like this. Whereas in a book like this, we get a lot of individual time almost with all of the characters, and they all seem very well fleshed out. There is a point to why they are the way they are. There's a point to them being in the book, and they all kind of work together really well. Like the fabric of the group in a book like this also works really well. What also sets this book apart from Six of Crows, in my opinion, is that it's just a lot more complex and interesting. And again, yes, YA adult, that is kind of automatically the case. But especially in a fantasy that is supposed to have like political intrigue and that type of stuff going and like heists being pulled off, complexity is necessary for it to be interesting, and that was completely lacking in Six of Crows. Especially in Crooked Kingdom, I felt like Cass had kind of always had something up his sleeve, but it seemed completely like plot armor almost. Whereas in this book, you get the impression that the characters are actually in danger. In this series, I just felt like the stakes were more important, and all of that taken together, I much prefer The Lies of Locke Lamora. And if you are looking for a book either similar to this or better than this, I highly recommend checking out The Lies of Locke Lamora. It's truly going to be worth your time, I promise. And finally, another very popular book that I hated. Shocker. Illuminae by J. Kristoff and Amy Kauffman. If you're looking for a book written in file format that is sci-fi and fun, you should better read Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel. This is a billion times better. Both of these books, as I said, are written in file format, and I just felt like in Illuminae, that was very surface level. Like the only reason that was included was for the gimmickiness of it. To me, it didn't add a whole lot to the story. The dialogue was atrocious. You can watch my whole review on this if you haven't already. I go very in depth on all of the bigger and smaller issues I had with this book. Didn't feel like it was necessary to have this in a file format if it didn't add anything to the story. Whereas in Sleeping Giants, I felt like the file format worked really well. It's not as flashy and like aesthetically pleasing as in Illuminae, but honestly, I'd much rather have a good book that isn't all the colors of the rainbow than something like Illuminae that was just 600 pages of garbage. So that's it for my little excursion into books that are shit, but there's better versions out there, so chin up and go check out the better ones. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave comments down below of other books that you hated, but you actually found better versions of them, because I would love to see that. And while you're down there, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I hope to see you very soon with another video. Until then, have a lovely week. Bye!